Okay, let's kick things off by talking about a revolution. Not the kind with flags and barricades, but one that happened silently, inside one of the most, well, boring objects imaginable. We're going to talk about a simple metal box. I mean, seriously, think about it. What if the single biggest thing that created our modern, globalized world, the thing that reshaped entire economies and moved millions of jobs, wasn't the flashy stuff like the microchip or the internet, but this, a plain, boring, corrugated steel container? So, to really get why this box is such a big deal, we have to rewind the clock. You've got to picture what the world was like before it came along. And let me tell you, it was a world of pure chaos, insane inefficiency, and just unbelievable expense. So before the box, the world felt, well, a lot bigger and way more disconnected. Shipping costs were through the roof, which meant most markets were totally local. You know, the idea of making something in one country and selling it in another, that was a luxury, not the norm. And the docks, forget about it, total gridlock. But after the box, suddenly you have cheap, seamless transport. And that is what created the global supply chains that pretty much defined our entire modern economy. So you're probably asking, where did all that money go? I mean, if you look at this breakdown from the 1960s, your first guess would probably be the ocean journey, right? That's got to be the biggest cost. But well, the numbers here tell a very, very different story. And this is where it gets crazy. This chart just lays it all out. Almost half, nearly 50% of the total cost had nothing to do with sailing across the ocean. Nope, it was all about the nightmare of just getting the cargo on and off the ship. We're talking a slow, expensive, manual process of moving every single crate and barrel one by one. The port itself, that was the real bottleneck. It was choking off global trade. Okay, so who's the hero who fixed this massive problem? Well, the popular story, the one you always hear, is about this one guy, a trucker named Malcolm McLean, having a sudden flash of genius. But the real story? The real story is so much better, and it's got a much more powerful lesson for any of you thinking about innovation or trying to disrupt an industry. Yeah, this is that classic heroic tale we all love, right? The story goes that way back in 1937, a super frustrated McLean was stuck waiting for hours at a pier. And then, boom, epiphany. He thinks, why are we unloading the truck piece by piece? Why not just hoist the whole truck body right onto the ship? You know, that perfect aha moment. The only problem with that perfect story? It never happened. Yep, according to the historian Mark Levinson, who literally wrote the book on this, there is zero evidence this ever actually went down. It's a great story, for sure, but it's a total myth. The reality of how innovation works is almost never about a single flash of genius. It's about something much more deliberate and, frankly, more valuable. And here is the absolute key takeaway. McLean's true genius wasn't inventing a new thing. It was a completely different kind of insight, a managerial one. He had a fundamental shift in perspective. He realized his company wasn't in the business of sailing ships or driving trucks. It was in the business of moving cargo. That's it. The box was just a tool in a brand new system that he designed to do that one thing as efficiently as humanly possible. Okay, so McLean has this brilliant systems-level insight. But the revolution didn't just happen overnight, not even close. Because for a system to truly work on a global scale, every single piece of it has to speak the same language. And in the early days of containers, well, it was a mess. It was basically the Wild West. Seriously, just imagine a world where your iPhone, your friend's Android, your laptop, they all had completely different incompatible charging cables. That's exactly what the early container industry was like. McLean's company, Sealand, used one size. Their biggest competitor, Matson, used a totally different one. The U.S. Army had its own version. Nothing fit with anything else. You had a system where none of the parts could actually connect. It was useless on a grand scale. So how do you fix that kind of chaos? Well, it was a battle. A long, drawn-out fight. It took years of arguing and boring committees to finally agree on standard sizes and, even more importantly, a standard lifting mechanism, the humble twist lock. And this is so important. That boring, unglamorous process of creating a standard, that is what created the network effect. That's what made every port and every ship instantly more valuable, because now they could all talk to each other. It was the key that finally unlocked the entire global system. So now the system is finally in place. Everything's standardized. And once it was fully unleashed, oh man,
It changed the world in ways that absolutely no one, not even the people who built it, could have ever predicted. At the time, the so-called experts dismissed it. They called it a minor innovation, something that might be useful for some shipping along the coast. Minor. Can you believe that? No one predicted it would make these centuries-old, bustling ports like New York City's entire waterfront basically obsolete overnight. And no one saw that it would ignite the explosive rise of massive manufacturing hubs all over Asia, while at the same time decimating factory jobs back in the West. See, it didn't just change shipping, it completely redrew the economic map of the entire planet. And you don't have to take my word for it, you can see that massive shift right here in the numbers. Just look at the insane growth in container traffic for ports like Shanghai and Shenzhen between 1990 and 2003. They went from basically nothing to becoming the busiest ports on the face of the earth. And why? Because with transport costs suddenly becoming a rounding error, it now made perfect economic sense to make your stuff anywhere in the world and ship it everywhere else. This wasn't just a tweak to shipping. This was a fundamental transfer of global economic power. And today, that system moves over 300 million container loads across the ocean every single year. Just let that sink in for a second. Every product you own, the device you're watching this on, the food you eat, the clothes you're wearing, it's almost guaranteed that everything has spent time inside one of these simple, standardized boxes, all part of this massive, automated, global machine. So, what's the point of all this? What's the big takeaway for you? Because the story of the box isn't just a cool piece of history. It's a powerful case study in how real, world-changing innovation actually happens. And it's packed with lessons that apply to pretty much anyone, in any industry. So let's really break down the big lessons here. First, and this is huge, innovation is about systems, not just clever inventions. The box itself was kind of useless without the entire ecosystem of cranes, ships, and trucks built around it. Second, you have to embrace the boring but crucial work of standardization. It's the invisible engine that makes massive scale possible. Third, get ready for unintended consequences. The biggest ripple effects are often the ones nobody sees coming. And finally, never ever underestimate the power of boring old logistics. Sometimes the how something moves is way more revolutionary than the what. So I want to leave you with this one final thought, a question to take with you. Look around your own world, your industry, your company, your team. What is that inefficient, unglamorous, high-friction process that everyone just kind of accepts? The thing people say is just the way things are done? What is your boring box, that thing everyone is ignoring, that if you standardized it and built a real system around it, could change everything? Find that, and you might just start a revolution of your own.